As you know, the war in Vietnam was at its height at the same time. And when Martin Luther King made his famous speech at Riverside Church, and it's perhaps the speech that got him killed, where he linked the struggle for civil rights with the struggle against the war in Vietnam. That heightened the ante, because racism was still going on in the military. Although Vietnam was the first war where the military was no longer segregated, the racism, the intensity of racism was still there. You know, black and Latino soldiers were being killed disproportionately, and the racism expressed directly was continued to exist. That was reflected in the number of white officers that were killed by their own soldiers. Many black and Latino soldiers killed their white officers. And it was a dirty little secret that the Pentagon kept quiet. And it was, we saw pieces of this information leaking out. And by the end of the war, it was one of the reasons why the U.S. pulled out of Vietnam. It pulled out of Vietnam not only because they were getting their asses kicked by the Vietnamese people, okay, who had a reason to fight. They were fighting to save their homes. But the discipline inside of the military has shattered. And there was no unification in the ranks of the military, and it's something that was revealed later on in many documents regarding the deterioration of U.S. military forces in Vietnam. You know, going back to your point, there is no blueprint regarding you know, how is it that we go about in emancipating society at this time. But what we can do is look at the spirit of the 1960s and 70s and keep in mind, because what that shows us, that history shows us, is that these tyrants are not invincible, that they can be overwhelmed. Their power is based on our ignorance. And as long as we are ignorant, they will remain in power. I'm a strong supporter of the Cuban Revolution. In fact, I've been to Cuba twice. And it was, the Batista government was a puppet regime of the U.S. And the reason why those 12 million people were never invaded is because they knew that those 12 million people will eat them alive if a U.S. invasion were to take place. They love their country, they love what they have, and they will fight to keep it. And that is consciousness. When people are united and determined to change their reality, they can do it. That was a fact during the American Revolution. That was a fact in the abolition of slavery in this country. That has been a fact throughout human history. Whenever people come together on one idea, they can materialize it.
And in terms of how we kept things together, we didn't agree ideologically on everything, but we had a common unity. And that common unity is what we stood with. We didn't want to have the kind of repression that we were experiencing as people. Whether you were poor white, poor black, poor Latino, the experience was not much different. And we raised level of awareness by explaining how it was that there was not much difference. I grew up in a predominantly black project. And in a time where the Muslims were the 4%ers, 5%ers? 5%ers were seeing anyone with light skin and blue eyes as a blue-eyed devil. And I had to learn how to fight to defend myself. But in my fight, my first attempt was verbal communication. Why are you picking on me when I live right here with you? Don't you see that I eat the same food as you? I call it arroz con gandule, you call it rice and peas. You eating chitlins, we call it mondongo. So why are we into this mess? And little by little, we got some common understanding. We got to do that in terms of even the universities. We had people in your college who thought that because you're Jamaican, you're better than the African Americans, because you're Cuban, you're better than the Puerto Ricans thinking that they're better than anybody else.
They didn't know the slave ships made different stops.
That's right. So when they got to understand that we're all living the same experience and our common unity are that we don't want to have these prices go up on tuition and books that we can't afford, so we can't come here no more. Then a coalition was built where there was everyone, white, black, green, yellow, it didn't matter, because you had a coalition to save your education. We did that with the Black Panthers, with the Iwaku, with even the Great Panthers, which was a senior citizen group that was organizing. With the Gay Liberation Front, we found common unities, and we worked from that perspective. And we agreed to disagree. We may not have said it that way, but we did. We agreed to disagree. And when they saw that we had a march with 10,000 people, and I say they is the CIA, FBI, they said, oh shit, the same way they did with Malcolm. Well, Malcolm showed force of discipline and structure. It was, we gotta get rid of that man because he's got too much power. The same thing happened when we had that 10,000 people march in New York City with the United Front. Because we even had a united front with the independence movement in Puerto Rico and the PNP, the Nationalist Popular Party, is it?
No. It was the Puerto Rican Socialist Party.
No, era PNP también.
No, PNP are the U.S. installed pro-statehood.
Oh, okay. I got it confused. Don't mind me, I'm 65. And in America, eating junk shit. but anyway, I own that responsibility. I just wanted to say that what we can bring to you is a knowing that we're invincible when we stand together. The reason why there was a development of unions in this country is because the workers stood together. What we can't forget is that no matter what reforms we gather, capitalism will always be capitalism. Imperialism will always be imperialism. If we want a different society, then we have to create a different society. And bring people to the understanding of how that's going to benefit them. Mm-hmm. That's why I said, we're not going to argue with anyone. If there's someone that attacks us, we're going to say, well, we welcome your ideas. What are they? And then we will respond, this is our position on your ideas.
Some people folks here have something to say.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, first I'm really glad you mentioned about like historical and dialectical materialism and like bringing the topic of bringing socialism back to the masses. I think it's important to look at because in school nowadays they don't teach us history as like a living, breathing science. They don't teach us the inroads between the natural and social sciences. We don't learn about like the militancy of the Young Lords, the Black Panthers in the 60s. During a time when there's national liberation struggles all over the world, the militancy of taking over buildings like CCNY and hostels, which I go to CCNY actually, and and seeing how for CUNY, a school that's been free for 100 years, for two world wars and a Great Depression, to implement tuition for the first time when the demographics in New York City became majority Black and Latino, it's a direct racist attack, and to this day CUNY erases that history. And so we see like throughout the past few decades, we see the introduction of drugs to the prison system, nonprofits to pacify us, and today what do we see? Fascism, and I call it for what it is, fascism, because we have Nazis in our office right now. We have Nazis in our office, and it's not just in America. In Latin America, in the Middle East, in Europe, we're seeing the rise of all these right-wing governments, and and it's what's crazy is how now more than ever we don't see the unity of like the students, of the workers, in a really broad movement that would create a new party, because the Democrats are constantly failing us. The Republicans all split up. Right now we see, the FBI is, having contradictions with Trump, the CIA, and then the rest of the bourgeoisie in America are falling apart, And I think what you said was very important. Labor and production is all isms, but the relationships amongst us are what is the mode of production, And I think, what I'm here for is how we can create that new alliance amongst CUNY, amongst the unions, amongst different oppressed sections to create maybe a new rainbow coalition, maybe learning from the lessons in the past. And I guess my question is, I think it's really important studying the effects, disastrous effects of Robles-Toro, and how we can use those lessons today in 2017 to bring about a new vibrant movement with the same militancy, because that right now they want us to be pacified, they want us to keep fighting each other, they want us to, and like you said, capitalism has been, Lenin said it 100 years ago, imperialism is more about capitalism, and they make all these crises, like Occupy Wall Street was a good example, that these crises happen over and over, and they tell us, oh, don't worry, it's going to fix itself, but it's not. And I think how can we actually bring about socialism in our CUNY again? How can we bring those conversations back with the same ideology that something different from how this CUNY system teaches us? I think one last point is the young lawyers back home, they reshaped what it really means for a free CUNY, not just free intuition, but free in the concept of education. Bringing back ethnic studies programs, really teaching us about what our own people's history. And I think how can we create a CUNY movement like that?
I'm glad you raised that, because there's such a thing as what is our conscious input in things, but then there's this other thing called a phenomenon. And it's the combination of those two things that can best characterize human life. Not everything that occurs we have control of. It happens on its own. And one of the things that happens on its own, that has a life of itself,